Welcome to the Catalyst Sale Podcast. Whether you are a sales professional, not in sales but interested in helping people solve problems, or a founder, CEO who is looking to grow your business, you'll find practical tools, stories, and experience you can apply to your role. I'm your host, Jody Mayberry, and I'm here with the co-founder of Catalyst Sale, Mike Simmons. Hello, Mike.
Hey, Jody. I'm listening to that introduction, and I know we changed this number of episodes back, and it reminds me that I wanted to say thank you, or I want to say thank you to everybody out there who listens to the show, who shares the show, who contacts us and shares personal stories about how they're applying things, whether they're applying ideas like don't let your problems become your customers' problems, or they're leveraging the podcast templates that we use around call planning and account planning, how they're getting better with time management, how they're improving focus. Thank you for all of those stories. Please continue to share these episodes with others who you think would find the content interesting, who would actually be able to apply it and use it as a way to make an impact in their role. So thank you. And Jody, it's great to talk to you.
Well, Mike, I'm glad you said that. I'm glad you gave the thank you and suggested people share the show. And let's talk about this for a moment, that the new opening that we changed a while back actually came from feedback. As we learned more about the people that listen and what they do with the show, that's what changed the opening. So Mike is always listening. If you have questions, if you have comments, Mike just doesn't get behind a mic and talk. He actually listens to what you're saying, and we adjust the show accordingly.
And now that you say that, it's a good thing we didn't call this show Mike Behind the Mic.
Maybe that's the offshoot. It's just whatever's on Mike's mind, and it's just Mike rambling behind the mic.
Good thing we edit a lot of that rambling out. And there's a little peek behind the curtain. We do edit. We do remove some of the ums.
Some of them. Yeah, we do a little editing, but I think that's okay.
But like a fine wine or a good bourbon, we're getting better with age. And hopefully the editor out there is having to do a little bit less editing, even though we continue to expand or creep on the scope or length of the podcast. But we're getting better.
Yes. Well, Mike, as time has gone on, my notebook that I use as I record, it involves less and less stars by it, because a star always tells me this item needs attention.
Oh, that's awesome.
Well, I want to bring a topic to you, Mike. I was talking to somebody here in town locally who he started his business on his own, where it was just him, and he's done so well that he couldn't keep up. So he started hiring more people, and he now has 7 employees. Wow. So in just a couple of years, maybe 4 years, he's gone from just him to 7 employees. And he was asking more about scaling. Like, I'm up to this, what should I think about now? He's an architect, but it just got me thinking about this show and the things that we talk about. And it makes me want to ask you, if you're an organization that has a sales team, how do you know when it's time to scale and add another member to your sales team?
Yeah, and it's such a hard question to answer, an important question to answer. I mean, you could look at it and you could say, well, it's kind of simple. I mean, you go in there and you've got more work than you know what to do with, or you have too many leads coming in, or you're not able to serve all of your customers properly, or things are starting to fall through the cracks. And now we just go ahead and we add headcount. But there's a lot of risk in adding headcount, especially in sales organizations. And I know this happens in every organization and in most functional areas. You can't just plug a cog into the machine and have that machine just continue to perform at the rate that it is and then start performing better. There's likely going to be a little bit of a step backward as you onboard that person, as you integrate that person into the culture, as you design the role based on capabilities that you need inside your organization. So there are a lot of questions that you have to, or that you should start asking yourself before making that decision to hire. And when you hire a sales rep, you realize, especially if it's your first sales rep, you don't really know how much time it's going to take for that rep to start performing. And there are a number of factors that will play into performance. Some factors include support. Some factors include where customers come from and what that customer journey looks like, what that customer buying experience looks like. Some maybe driven by whether your organization's an inbound sales organization or an outbound sales organization. So, Jody, I think this is a great topic and look forward to the conversation.
Well, then let's start. I think there's a couple parts. And so let's start with the idea of adding somebody. And I'll tell you where we're going to go with all of this is first, how do you know when to say, okay, it's time. I've got to add someone else to the team. And the other is onboarding. How do you bring that member onto the team? And 3 is how do you, maybe this is part of onboarding, but I see this as bigger. I view onboarding as the short term, like welcome to the team. And these are the steps we're going to walk them through. But then bigger, which is why I view this as a different part, is introducing them to the culture and making someone new to the team part of the culture where they don't feel like an outsider. So those are the 3 places I want to take this and who knows where else this will go. So that's the first one. Being able to just identify and say, okay, now's the time. We need to bring somebody on. And you touched on it a little bit, but if I am either a sales manager or a founder, and we take this architect now, he wasn't hiring sales professionals, but he just got to a point where he said, I can't do this alone anymore. I need to bring someone on. And then that's now happened 7 times where he said, I can't do this with me and 5 people. I need to bring someone else on for this role. So let's look at that first, knowing, okay, now is the time. I can't possibly do this or maybe we do it before we get to the point where we say, I can't possibly do this anymore. But give us some more insight into that, identifying we do need to add to our sales team.
Yeah, I think the key thing that comes up, and you were kind of describing it in the feedback that this person was giving you or the story that they shared, but you start to identify these patterns. And one of the patterns that you identify is I am no longer able to deliver or make good on the commitments that things that I've committed to relative to my customer base. Or it might even be relative to my family. Maybe it's in my personally, like I'm not getting up to the gym enough, or I'm not getting good sleep, or any of these things. You start to identify patterns that exist that repeat themselves. And if those patterns start to reveal themselves, it may be time for you to go out and hire to relieve some of that stress or relieve some of that pressure. Patterns might be, maybe I have too many leads and we're just not following up with leads fast enough inside our organization. Or how about this one? I've identified, I can predict based on experience in the market, which customers are ready to buy, when they're ready to buy, who the roles are that we should be talking to. Those people are finding us and they're raising their hand, but we don't have enough people inside our organization to support it. Those become indicators where you're no longer serving the customer that you wanted to serve because you just don't have the team in place to support the workload. And if that's the case, it may be time to scale in specific areas.
You know, that reminds me, I did some marketing work for a company, and when they brought in new leads now because their marketing got better, they weren't prepared on the other end to deal with it. So maybe they had the ability to, and I'm making these numbers up just for conversation's sake, maybe they had the ability to deal with 1 lead a week, and now you increase it to 5. Well, 4 of those are wasted because they couldn't do anything with it. They did not have the capacity within their team. It wasn't that they didn't have the desire. They just did not have a big enough team or the right structure, the right processes in place to deal with an extra 4 leads a week. And they went wasted. And I think if you can identify that that's happening, then that's an indication that, okay, you probably need to add to the sales team to have somebody in place to handle those leads.
Yeah. And Jody, to build upon that, I think the other thing that you'll identify in that scenario is you start to see that you're doing the same thing over and over again. So I'm struggling to find a good story here around this, but let's just say that with every organization that you're working with, there are 3 questions that those people that people inside that organization need to answer. And then there's 3 things that happen with the data that comes from those questions. And then there's 3 more things that can be pulled together to deliver something back to the organization. But all of those are repeatable, meaning they happen all the time. You know the 3 questions, you know the 3 things, that the 3 pieces of information, and you know the 3 ways that that's going to be used. You now have this group of 36 things. My math is right. You've got this group of 36 things where, no, my math is wrong, 27 things. You've got this group of 27 things where you can now build a role around because that pattern has identified itself over and over again. And if you're going to continue to do it as the founder, or you're going to continue to do it as the VP of sales, or as the single sales rep inside the organization, realize that that time that you're focused there is taking you away from other things that you can be working on relative to the business. And this is where you get into that challenge of being in the business rather than working on the business.
You just gave me a new idea for a podcast, Mike, that we can team up on. You mentioned Mike behind the mic, but let's do a new one called Mike Does Math.
Yeah, awesome. I'm sure a lot of people will be entertained by Mike Does Math. So you guys, everybody out there, vote it up. Do you want to hear Mike behind the mic or Mike Does Math?
Well, back to the topic at hand. What you were saying reminded me of one of the most important lessons I learned in college. An economics professor once said that he was actually better at typing than his secretary. Now, he was old school, so he still said secretary. I know we don't use that term anymore, but he said, I am a better typist than my secretary, but it makes no sense for me to do my own typing, considering the things that typing keeps me from doing. And this goes along with what you're saying. If you find yourself doing the same things over that someone else can do, it's keeping you from doing the things that only you can do. So if you find yourself in that situation where you're typing instead of teaching economics, given the example I gave, it's probably time to start looking to scale the team.
Definitely.
Okay, so let's move to the next portion. We've decided, yes, we need to scale the team. It's got to happen. And now we've hired somebody. How do you bring them on board? So now I'm talking short term, introducing them to the team, getting them on board to show this is what we do, this is how we do it. Give us some talk about that.
So I'm going to assume, just for the sake of brevity, I'm going to assume that when you brought this person on board, you've already gone through Carol Quinn's motivation-based interviewing. You've hired the right person with an internal locus of control. They've got the right attitude. They've got the right initiative, and they've got the right behavior. They are coming in as a high-performing person inside the organization. So let's assume that. Fair?
That's fair, because of course they would hire based on motivation-based interviewing.
So we got this great person, and you've just hired this amazing person. If you tell them everything that they should be doing, you dot all the I's and you cross all the T's in the onboarding process, and you micromanage the crap out of that person, you are not going to benefit from the way that they're going to help you elevate your organization. So when you hire good people, let's let them do their jobs. Now, when you go through the onboarding process, you should still be able to map out some clear things. Like, what does that person need to know about the customers you serve? What does that person need to know about the structure of the organization? What does that person need to know about products that you deliver? I'll share an example in the show notes here of an onboarding mind map that we use when we're onboarding a new sales rep so that you can see this structure. Some of the things that factor into it are things like sales process. Again, not templated approach, some ideas and concepts that we want them to apply so that we're all using the same language and they can be integrated into the culture that exists inside the organization. The net of this is you need to plan. You need to design backwards based on the expected outcomes of the role, the functional things that person is going to be doing on a daily basis, the groups that are going to influence or that they will engage with on a consistent basis, and build out the capabilities so that they can speed up their time to impact inside that organization.
I think it's so important to make sure this part is deliberate, especially if you're a small company. It can be
Absolutely.
really easy if you've only got a few employees to have just winged it, onboarding people, and maybe even gotten it right because you were small and because you had a hand in everything you showed them and told them. But as you get bigger, it gets a little harder. And if you are not deliberate, if you don't have procedures in place, processes in place, the message you want to deliver, then you can really goof this part up.
Yeah, definitely. You can really goof this part up. And so, Jody, I think deliberate is a really important word and a really important approach, but also remember that the whole process is going to be iterative, right? You should learn throughout it. As you onboard someone new into the organization and you see that things are a little bit different, you see that the culture starts to shift, you see that the way that teams interact with each other starts to shift, you see that they bring a new perspective. Those things should be incorporated into your process that you're designing, your approach that you're designing, so that it's not static. It actually continues to evolve and breathe with your organization. So leverage your feedback loops, observe, orient, decide, act, and use this as a way to iterate that process. But as Jody mentioned, take a very deliberate approach to the way that you design for specific outcomes or desired outcomes, excuse me.
Well, and then the next part of this is making the new person part of the team, part of the culture. How would you go about doing that, Mike, so they don't always feel like the new guy or the new lady to the team, kind of an outsider for a little while? I know many of us have probably been through that and had to earn our way in. How do you introduce a new member to the culture of the sales team?
It's this really complex thing called empathy. Empathize, and I'm saying that a little, tongue in cheek, because it's a topic that continues to come up on the podcast. And actually, I had both my sister and my wife were shocked that we recorded a podcast episode around communicating with empathy. I don't know what that means, but as it relates to this specific piece, empathize with the person. Think of the challenges that you run into. Think of the norms that exist inside your organization that are just known but aren't really stated, and communicate those things to the new person. Help them with that onboarding process. Look at using job shadowing, using mentors, connecting them with colleagues so that they can ask direct questions of those folks, engage with them in the work operation, and learn from those processes. Now, keep in mind that every time you add something to this equation, you've changed the overall, and here's the Mike does math, but you've changed the overall makeup of that equation. So as you add something in, the flavor profile of the organization is going to shift a little bit. The culture is going to shift a little bit. And that culture can either be getting stronger or it can be going in a backward direction. The way that you can help the culture get stronger is by engaging others in that overall process and making sure that they understand we all wear the same logo. We all have the same domain at the end of our email address. We all support this customer base. We have this objective that we want to meet. We believe in the market. We believe in the product. We believe in solving the problem that exists out there. We are much stronger than me as an individual. We'll work together as we go through this. So I think when I think of onboarding someone with that mindset, it's about and integrating them into the culture. It's about helping them communicate, helping them network, helping them engage with others, and really helping them be part of the team.
And this piece right here it will really be a model of what you show your new sales professional here as you introduce them into the culture and show them this is who we are, this is what we're like. That's how they're going to deal with customers in the future. And that's how they're going to deal with coworkers in the future. So just like on the first part, or the last part we talked about, the onboarding, how you need to be deliberate, you also have to be deliberate about your culture, because that's how you're telling your new sales professional to handle people. You're telling them this is who we are. And it better be something that you've thought about and you're deliberate about, that you want them to represent the organization in that way.
Definitely.
Okay, Mike, I feel like we've covered this Well, do you have any final thoughts for us or advice about scaling your team?
Yeah, I think an important thing to remember is ask your customer questions about this too. I mean, like, don't do this in a vacuum. Don't unless you're a solopreneur or you're a freelancer and you're looking to build scale, and you've got to do this, and you're going to do that by bringing in other resources that might be a little bit different. Then talk to your significant other, talk to your network, share some concerns that you have around the challenges that might happen. By exposing the problem, the challenge to others, and thinking this through with others, you will help to eliminate or at least reduce the number of blind spots that you potentially have, because the lens that you're looking at this is potentially so skewed. It's a very focused lens that you're looking at things through. Engage with others, have those conversations, and realize you'll make mistakes as you go through. But if you hire the right people and you communicate directly with folks, you can work through many of those challenges.
All right. Wonderful, Mike. Thank you so much. But before we go, you mentioned earlier that you like for people to share the episode. You like for people to reach out, give feedback. If we've got something to say to you, Mike, how can we do it?
A couple ways. You can go to catalystsale.com. If you go to catalystsale.com, you'll see our website. There's a live chat button that will pop up. If you ask a question in that live chat window, it actually goes directly into our Slack instance. So that's one way to communicate with us. Probably the most active way are through the social media accounts, which would be at Catalyst Sale on Twitter, at Catalyst Sale AZ on Facebook, at Catalyst Sale on Instagram. And if you're still into email, you can send us an email at hello@catalystsale.com.
All right. Thank you so much, Mike. And thank you for listening to the Catalyst Sale Podcast.